right, are we ready to begin?
Yes.
Okay, great. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. We had a nice little evening so far.
Yes.
We got together and had dinner before this.
Yeah, we chatted business.
That's
we chatted. I think that's it.
That's right. How do I look?
You look great.
I'm asking because I saw a video where I'm like really slouched down, and Ursula has a very long torso, so she tends to look very tall in videos. But you're tall overall.
I'm tall and I have a long neck.
Yeah, so I have to always remind myself to stand as straight and have as good of a posture as possible.
You look great.
So what are we talking about today?
Okay, so today we're going to talk about the best skincare treatments and products by decade. So what everyone should be doing in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
Very important.
And I mean, so many people ask me this, and so many people ask you.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the answers I know, but a lot of the surgical and non-surgical things I don't know. So that's where you come in.
This is my expertise. This is my lane. I love it.
Yeah.
But your lane too. You know about this.
Yeah, I mean, I feel very comfortable about the skincare part of it and like lifestyle choices. But I don't know, like there's so many new amazing treatments and there's so many great surgical and non-surgical things. And as you know, the technology is, being developed so rapidly, and there are new things that maybe don't work so well. And there are tried and true things that work really well.
Yeah.
And there are newer things that have improved the classic things.
Yeah.
So I want to know for myself, and I know a lot of people that I know want to know what we should be doing to look our best, what lasers, what everything.
Right. Well, what's great, I was going to say, is you have been taking very good care of yourself for a long time. This has always been a priority of yours. Yeah. So I think it'd be interesting as we go along to share what you've done, because obviously it's worked.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, so where do we start?
I think a good place to start is 20s.
20s? Yeah, okay.
Or do you want to start before that, like teens?
You know what? I'll tell you this. It's interesting. When I look back, I wish I took better care of I wish I knew anything about skincare when I was in my teenage years, because I had terrible acne.
Really?
Yeah, well, to me, like looking back, now putting in perspective, like as a doctor, I see patients with really bad acne, so I can't say that it was as severe as some of the cases I've seen. But it was bad enough that I was self-conscious about it. I think a lot of teenagers go through that, and I had acne breakouts on my face all the time. And of course, at that age, you think everyone's staring at your acne.
I know, and they probably are.
Right.
But even as parents, right?
Yeah,
like we want to know what to do for our children when that happens.
That's right.
So I would say, like, definitely go to a dermatologist, right? If you can take your child to a dermatologist. But I know for me, like, I just wanted to use anything. And like my best friend at the time had really oily skin. So she used like some oil-free salicylic wash by Neutrogena. I didn't have acne when I was 12 and 13 and 14.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know of anything else. So I used that. So I think the most important thing in the teens and in the 20s is a gentle cleanser, right? Because we all need to clean our skin.
Right.
But I think that's where people start off on the wrong foot, because they're stripping the skin.
Yes.
They're irritating it.
That's
and
right.
Most people, unless you do have acne, at that age, 12, 13, 14, you don't really need a lot. Your skin's fine.
That's right. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It is a source of a lot of problems, people overdoing things. Yeah. But cleansing is the basis, right? Like you need to have the skin cleansed of impurities and debris, and it's one of the reasons that you end up getting acne, is because the pores get clogged. So cleanser is great. And then, of course...
And a gentle cleanser, right?
Gentle cleanser.
If you don't have acne, or if you don't have really oily skin, you don't need salicylic acid, or you don't need a chemical exfoliant every day, twice a day, because that can cause inflammation or, disturb the skin barrier, right? And that can cause acne.
Yeah, so exactly. So, and I was going to say salicylic acid and all of those treatments, for spot treatments to treat stubborn areas of acne, very, very helpful. And I think, a lot of teenagers maybe neglect this or overlook, and it's actually can be very helpful, not only for their skin health but also self-esteem. It is a big issue. Yeah.
And what I would add too is for that age when you're young, you're in middle school, of course if you get a zit, it's the end of the world. But I think salicylic acid as a spot treatment is better than something like a benzoyl peroxide, because I vividly remember getting a zit and using vanishing cream. Everybody used vanishing cream, but it's benzoyl peroxide, and I think it was 10%. Maybe now it's 5%, but I burned my face. So I think for your kids, or if you're a young person listening to this, maybe doing salicylic acid for a spot treatment.
Yeah.
If you're young and
have
have
that's a good idea.
skin.
But I like what you said also, always consulting with a professional. I think it's great, especially at that age. Then you enter your 20s.
You're into your 20s.
Acne sometimes is not as much of an issue. Sometimes it is. But what do you think works really well for, let's say, someone in their 20s?
So I vividly remember when I was a freshman in high school, I think I was 14, and all of the lotions started having sunscreen in them. So it was like SPF 30. And I've never liked sitting in the sun. I've never liked lying out, and my parents and my sister love it. And I never liked the feeling of like having like my skin really hot or getting sunburned. I just didn't like that feeling. So there are so many family vacation photos where everyone's in their bathing suit, and I have like a towel wrapped around me and a hat and sunglasses.
You were ahead of your time.
Ahead of my time, but I honestly just didn't like the feeling. But I remember when the face creams came out, all the moisturizers at the drugstores started to have sunscreen. That was a new thing. So I wore it every day, and I loved it. I've always loved sunscreen. And I remember my mom saying, like, you have to stop with the sunscreen. Like, your face is so white. And I mean, I was just putting it on my face. I mean, God, I hope I put it on my neck, but I don't know if I did. And I love sunscreen. I love protecting my skin. So I think the best thing that I did for myself starting in around 14 is I wore sunscreen every day.
Yeah. You know what? This is actually a really good thing to talk about, because from a medical perspective, your skin is probably never better than when you're in your 20s. This is like the peak of your biology, of like skin cell health. It's really when it's the decade where, like, if you can establish great habits and really set yourself off on a great trajectory, you're going to set yourself up for great aging. The 20s is such a key time. And a lot of people are shocked when I tell them this. You know, our cells, all the cells in the body, including the skin, they really start to lose their ability to bounce back and heal and regenerate in the mid to late 20s. So the better you can take care of yourself in the 20s, the higher the trajectory is going to be that you can really do well in your 30s and 40s and in the future.
But if we lose that ability to bounce back by mid 20s, then it would make sense to really focus even before the 20s, right?
Well, I often tell patients that the way to see it is in your 20s, think of it as like you want to maintain what you have and prevent future damage. Okay. So it's a great time to start thinking of prevention.
Okay, and protection.
So that's why sunblock is so important, because when you're young and in your 20s, you're, like you said, back in the day, people sunbathing. I remember how popular it was in the early 2000s, going to suntan salons.
I know. So like I was all about the sunscreen for my face, but unfortunately I went to tanning beds. Definitely don't tan. So let's talk about like the three things to do and the 3 things you absolutely shouldn't do. So I think for the 20s is really keeping it simple, right? There's so many things on TikTok now and social media and things that are popular, but it's really about keeping it simple, right? So depending on what your issue is, obviously if you have acne, that's different. But like, let's say basic maintenance, right? So to prevent and to protect the skin. Gentle cleanser. You probably need a moisturizer. I mean, vitamin C is great, right? Antioxidant protection if you can do it. And sunscreen. Yeah, sunscreen's key. I think I agree with you. Sunscreen, this is the decade to really start using sunscreen. You should always use it, even younger ages, but sunscreen is critical at this age to start preventing those problems that are going to develop if you don't. Okay. And then, so what's your opinion about retinol? Because some people say like you should start in your 20s. Some people say 30s. What do you think? Yeah, I think, retinol, the reason, all the retinoids are so effective is because they start working at the cell at the DNA level. And so it really helps skin cell turnover. It helps the skin repair itself from damage. So it's a very powerful ingredient. The 20s is a great time to start it. You don't have to maybe in the 20s, but it is a great time to start introducing these things. Okay, and if you have acne, then yes. Yes. And there are various forms of it that
That's
maybe
right.
are more gentle.
Right. And vitamin C is a great antioxidant. So these are things that are going to help. You're going to get damage on the skin. It's going to happen. So you want to help support your skin's ability to heal itself and to protect itself. So the antioxidants are going to help that. Vitamin C is great. Again, you don't want to do too much at this age because
Keeping
to your
it simple
point, trying to keep
is
it a little
good.
bit simple, but starting to maintain great or starting to establish really good habits, I think that is going to set you for a long-term success.
Great. And then also sunscreen. And then also what I think is really important is lifestyle choices, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because in your 20s, maybe you're in college and you're going out a lot, and a lot of people are drinking, smoking,
Yes.
and all of these have terrible effects on the skin, right?
That's right.
You have to make sure that you're not do those things. I mean, obviously if you're in college and you want to party, or you're graduated from college, those are things you can do, but in moderation, because those really affect the skin, especially smoking.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the biggest mistake I think people will make sometimes is they start smoking, or they do it socially at that age. And if you smoke, that is like one of the worst things you can do, not only for your internal health, but your external health as well. The smoke, the carcinogens in it, no question about it, they start to damage the skin. And again, back to what I was saying earlier, that your skin is so great at this age that if you start damaging it and overpowering its own ability to heal itself, what you're going to do is set yourself up for failure in the following decades. So to your point, like, establishing healthy lifestyles is important. Avoiding smoking is huge. And then simple things like so we were talking about sunblock, but maybe be a little bit careful when you go in the sun and try to stay in the
Wear
shade.
Hat. Yeah, I think hats are becoming more popular. I love hats. I've always loved hats.
Yeah.
So smoking, I'm sure the numbers have gone down tremendously,
Yes,
right?
they
it's
have.
just not as popular.
Yeah.
However, vaping,
Right.
so that's just as bad, right?
That's right. That's
I
right.
mean, with vaping, excuse my ignorance because I don't know. Is there smoke that comes out?
Yes, there is.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that smoke is also damaging. So
Sure.
it's the same, right?
It's a vapor, and it's not as visible, but it's just as harmful.
It's not as visible, but it's just as harmful.
Yes.
Okay, so cut back on the drinking.
Yeah.
I mean, ideally, don't drink at all, right?
Right.
Ever.
Yeah.
Even in your
that's
30s.
that's gonna be super easy for 20s.
30s and 40s and 50s, right? I know, even us. Okay, smoking's horrible, and vaping, just don't do it.
Yeah.
Do not go in a tanning bed. So these are 3 things you can do.
Yeah.
And then, 3 things that you should be doing is drinking a lot of water,
Yes, hydrating is fantastic.
trying to eat fruits and vegetables.
Of course, absolutely.
And I do think that this generation is healthier and
Yes.
just kind of smarter about all those things. But there's still a lot of fried food. There's a lot of processed food.
Well, because you think in your 20s you're invincible, and you think that
when your metabolism probably works quicker, right?
But this, going back to this idea of like establishing good habits, it's going to get a little bit harder in the 30s, and then even so more in the 40s. So if you're not starting to kind of establish these healthy patterns, it's going to catch up to you, and then it's going to be even harder to change
and being
later.
realistic, right?
Yeah.
And I always tell people this, and this is what I do, and this has worked really well for me, is that 80-20 rule, right? So most of the time, try to eat as well as you can.
Right.
And then maybe on the weekends, like, treat yourself more.
Right.
But whatever it is that you'll actually do. So
Right.
eat vegetables, eat some fruit, because there's antioxidants, right? You're
Yeah.
going to have some internal antioxidant protection.
Should
So
we talk
that's
about-
20s.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so then depending on your skin issue and maybe late 20s, you should do retinol or a genetically blessed. And I think something like a genetically blessed that has antioxidants in it, that's really clean, is good for a younger age, because it's great for sensitive skin. It's not as harsh or as strong. And there's other great alternatives. It doesn't have to be genetically blessed.
Right.
Obviously, I'm biased.
Right.
But one of my girlfriends, Erin, actually, Aubrey, was having breakouts. So she's been using the honor system,
That's right.
and it's going really, really well for her.
Yeah.
And Aubrey is 17, right? I think she's 17
I think
now.
so, yeah.
And I didn't want her on something really harsh.
Yeah.
And so she had really good results with that. So maybe mid to late 20s doing the retinol, or having some kind of lactic acid or some kind of chemical exfoliation, right, to help with the cell turnover, because that's already slowing down.
Absolutely.
Right? Mid 20s, late
Yeah.
30s. And then what do you think about Botox? I mean, I know it varies so greatly, right? And you see in your practice every day, there's a woman who's 25 that comes in and she looks 18. And there's a woman who's 25 that comes in and she looks 40.
Yeah.
So the woman that looks 40 but she's 25 may need that Botox and that
Right.
chemical peel.
I'm happy you brought this up, because I definitely want to talk about this. But before we do it, I want to add that I was going to suggest that we were talking about retinols, we were talking about vitamin C. There's so
Yeah.
many commercially available products. You go to the pharmacy, the aisle's full of them. But there are clean, natural alternatives like Honor MD and Genetically Blessed. And this all is based in the ethnobotany that we talked about before in another episode, because there are sources for these types of ingredients that are stimulators of DNA synthesis and antioxidants that are actually derived from plants. So for people, some people don't want to use those, commercially synthetically made products that are in the pharmacy and would like an organic or natural or clean alternative, and they're out there. So that's always something to consider.
And another great store is Credo. Honor MD is not there yet, but finding a retailer or a brand that you really trust who's going to do all this homework for you, right? I think that's a good retailer that we are not affiliated with, that does not pay us, if you want to check them out.
So we're big fans of prevention, right? But at the end of the day, we do have to...
And protection.
And protection. And also, obviously, we believe very strongly in skincare and topicals products. But at the end of the day, we do have to recognize that there are things that these topical medications just can't do, or topical products can't do. And that's where you alluded to the Botox, and where these things come in. And as a plastic surgeon, no doubt I have seen the difference. So if you start... Now, a lot of people, and I remember when I first started, it was taboo to do Botox on someone in their 20s. That was considered like, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing Botox on someone that young, or someone who was that age doing it. It was like unheard of.
But why? Because they didn't have lines, or just because they were just too young?
Because the studies that were done up until that point were all in older, adults. Okay. And so the thought of like expanding this to a younger generation didn't seem like it was part of the protocol, so to speak.
Got it.
But it was done, and what we found, and I mean this is very obvious, is that those patients, it didn't make doing these treatments at that age didn't make such a visible difference at that time. But what it did was prevent those lines from getting deeper. So in my practice, without any doubt, when I see patients in their 30s or 40s who've been doing Botox since their 20s, there is no question that they look significantly younger and have much less visible lines. No question about it. Oh, wow. And then the patients who haven't started they have their lines and their wrinkles that are starting to form. So we can talk about like 30s and 40s. Yeah. But at that age, if you're in your 20s and you're considering Botox, I would say it's a great thing to do, again, for prevention. Which
is great. But to me, I'd love to clarify this, because people will say like, well, I'm just doing it preventatively, but they have a ton of lines. So I don't know if that just helps them feel better, but preventatively, when I hear that, I think no lines. So when you say that, do you think no lines or like minimal lines? Because I think by the late 20s, people have lines. They don't look bad normally, right? It's just like you just see them. They're just lines maybe that aren't very deep at rest.
Right, at rest. Exactly.
But there are lines there.
Right, absolutely. So with expression, meaning when you're animating or contracting your muscles, for sure, someone's going to have lines, for sure. But at rest is the issue. So that's where we really want to stop the progression of lines into deep wrinkles at rest. Because once you have them at rest, once those things have formed and you have them even when you're resting, then it's really hard to change it.
That's just a wrinkle. So like let's say a 28-year-old at rest has some lines, but they're minimal.
They're minimal.
So if she were to get Botox, or he, then they'd be nice and smooth. That would be preventing them from getting deeper.
Correct.
So you would recommend that?
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay. And for the reasons I said, there's no question that those patients that start earlier do have significant improvement in their aging process.
And is it true that, like, let's say someone who started Botox in their 20s, by the time they're in their 30s or their 40s, do they need less Botox than someone who started in their 40s?
Yes, there have been studies, because what Botox does is it inactivates the muscle. So muscle, like any muscle, when you go to the gym, the more you work it out, the stronger it becomes.
Yeah.
The less you work it out, the smaller and weaker it becomes. Well, if you're consistently inactivating the muscle over time, that muscle is going to get weaker and thinner. And so there have been studies that show that you need less and less concentrations of Botox to get the same effect.
Wow.
So it's kind of a nice little side effect. Yeah.
That's great. I don't know if I've experienced that yet, but I like that. Okay, so moving on to the 30s, right?
Yeah. I would say this age, so unlike the 20s where like your skin is unbelievable. It bounces back from anything. It's like at its peak health.
Yeah.
The 30s are where the signs of aging and the signs of skin damage are going to start. So that's where you might start seeing some blemishes appear, some hyperpigmentation might become more obvious. You're going to start getting more lines and wrinkles even at rest. So this is the age to really start targeting those signs of aging. And this is the critical time for you to really be, I think, very conscientious about your skincare.
Yes, and then you asked me what I did, and one thing I forgot that I did do in my 20s was chemical peels. I did do chemical peels because I was getting some breakouts, and that really helped me. And it was, it was a little bit deeper of exfoliation,
right.
But they were mild peels, so I really liked that. Yeah. And then in my 30s, again, very, very religious with my sunscreen.
Right.
Always wore a hat if I went for runs, if I was out at the beach, if I was by the pool, always wore a hat. And then my skincare got a lot smarter. Like I started working in the aesthetic industry when I was in college. And, I learned about the importance of vitamin C. My skin was so sensitive. Any vitamin C I used, I felt like it made me break out. So I really didn't use a lot of vitamin C. But I feel like in my 30s, I started using tretinoin, sunscreen, and like a very simple cleanser. But after I had a baby, my skin was so sensitive. I really felt like I couldn't tolerate the Retin-A anymore, and even retinol.
Yeah.
And so when we created Genetically Blessed, that just became my go-to, even now, because I felt like, your skin changes so much. And also I couldn't use, like you said, it's at the DNA level. You can't use that while you're trying to get pregnant, while you are pregnant, while you're nursing.
Most gynecologists and OBs will tell you probably to avoid those things.
It's proven to cause birth defects, so you just can't use it.
That's right.
But I had great results with tretinoin for cystic acne, for dark spots, for lines.
Right.
And so I think 30s you have to use that, right?
Yes.
Or something that helps with cell turnover.
Yeah.
Right?
No, you're 100% right. That's absolutely true. That's why I was going to say in your 30s, this is where you really need to start using these things. If you were in your 20s.
Actually, my late 20s, because when we met, I would put on my Retin-A. Yeah.
You were always kind of ahead of the curve, and you were always very diligent about your skincare, which is, and I mean, look at you now. You look fantastic.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, but it's a testament to that.
I worked in beauty, and when you work as a makeup artist, as a model, as an actress, I mean, your face is like part of how you make a living.
That's right.
So not only was I fascinated by it because of the acne stuff, I guess my main motivation was acne, but wanting to look my best on camera, in photos.
Yeah.
But I did use Retin-A in my late 20s.
No, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So the 30s, if you haven't started these things, then the 30s,
you have to.
It's like you have to start really incorporating this into your skincare. So obviously the basics, sun protection for sure, cleanser for sure. But now is the time to start introducing things that are a little bit more powerful, something that's going to act at the DNA level, and things that are going to be very preventative in terms of damage, like antioxidants. So that's where the vitamin C serums come in, where the retinols or the retinoid family comes in, where you want to use these products that are really going to work at these deeper, more powerful levels, because now your skin has lost that, like I talked about, in the late 20s, the skin is starting to lose its strength. And the 30s is where it needs help. So you want to help your skin along the 30s so that you continue on that great path of like really maintaining your appearance and your skin health. And again, if these things are too strong for your skin, or to your point, if you're pregnant, then you might want alternatives. And this is where ethnobotany comes in, and using products that are derived from plant sources that are going to be more gentle and that weren't synthesized in the lab and weren't artificially made. And these are where you can use these alternatives as an option, and if you can't tolerate the other ones.
Yeah, and a lot of them are just as effective.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So that's a great alternative. Okay, great. So the 20s is about prevention and protection, and the 30s is still about prevention, protection, but now supporting.
Yeah, right? That's a good way to put it. Exactly.
So finding things to support. Okay, so we got our topicals, right? So cleansing, moisturizing, sunscreen, vitamin C, cell turnover, Retin-A, Genetically Blessed, something like that. But now we probably need something to support those things. So what is that? Is it microneedling?
Right. So now the very early signs of aging are starting to appear structurally. So at the deeper skin levels, and even at the underlying subcutaneous or bone level. So what do I mean by that? Well, this is where people start losing a little volume in the face sometimes in the 30s. And this is where fillers can be a great adjunct if someone's starting to get a little bit of hollowing in certain areas, or they're starting to form maybe deeper nasolabial folds. This is where you might start seeing these things. Now, not in the early 30s, but definitely mid to late 30s, that's where you're going to start seeing this. So you want to support, increase the volume of the skin, and you want to stimulate collagen. You want to be able to stimulate the skin to make its own collagen and be able to sustain what it has and not lose it, because that's where you can start losing this. So microneedling is fantastic. So microneedling is a treatment where you're creating basically micro trauma at the almost microscopic level, and you're creating these little channels in the skin that stimulate the skin to produce more collagen, which improves the skin thickness, elasticity, and overall health. So microneedling is great. You can do that with or without PRP, for example.
And so PRP, for everyone that doesn't know, because I don't know if my mom knows, what is that?
Platelet-rich plasma.
And how do you get it?
So you get it from a syringe. They draw it in the office from a syringe from your vein, and it's processed right there in the office. And then injecting that with microneedling has been shown to enhance the results of microneedling alone. Then there are even more powerful types of treatments, like let's say a Morpheus, which we use here in the office, where it's microneedling with heat. And the heat is generated by radiofrequency energy, because heat, we know, contracts collagen. So now we're trying to induce some skin tightening, because this is another place where you're going to start showing some signs of aging, is in looseness.
Okay, so laxity. And maybe around the lower face, right?
The lower face, yeah. Where a lot of gravity, that's where it's going to have the most effect, in the lower face and the neck.
Okay.
And I know this is a big topic of interest. Yeah.
Yes, and we're moving quickly, but I wanted to share that for microneedling, I definitely saw the results and I really liked it. I don't really like needles. So I think the first time I did it, I'm like, I don't want to do PRP. And then Janie, our amazing soon-to-be nurse practitioner, she was like, no, you have to. Please, come on. Like, you've had babies. You can do this. So we did it, and I did notice a difference. And another thing that people are talking a lot about is the sperm. Salmon sperm. Yes, salmon sperm.
Right.
But which is actually not salmon sperm. It's like the DNA from the salmon sperm, right? And so it's been very popular in Korea. And in Korea, they inject it into the skin. But we don't have FDA approval here, so I know it's topical. So you're technically not allowed to microneedle it in like you are PRP, but you can put it on after, and people are saying that they really like those results too, right?
Yeah, probably, and this is like exosomes are another kind of category of...
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because people are really interested about that too.
Yeah, and we should probably even do a whole episode about exosomes.
I would love to.
Yeah, so exosomes are these vesicles that the cells produce, and they contain usually peptides or other kind of molecules that communicate with the cells, that they use to communicate to each other. And there are powerful mediators in these exosomes that can stimulate DNA synthesis, they stimulate cell function. And so it's in a very exciting kind of like part of skin cell research now. So exosomes kind of have exploded. And there have been some suggestions that if you apply exosomes topically on the skin, combined with microneedling, you can see enhanced benefits. So I think across the board, if you do microneedling, even if you do it by itself, you're going to see benefits.
Yeah, and there are plenty of studies to show that, right?
That's proven.
I love things that have studies, whether it's skincare, ingredients, products, or treatments. And so I love that there's so much clinical data that shows that it works.
Right. And so adding, anything to the microneedling can help enhance the results, like heat through Morpheus, or salmon sperm topically, or PRP, exosomes. Those are all things that can definitely perhaps enhance the results of the microneedling alone.
And when we do the episode on exosomes, maybe we can share like a few brands, because I know everybody now is claiming exosomes, and you explained to me that it's not that easy. So people can make lots of claims. There aren't a lot of rules with that in the US, but it may not be the form of it that's actually effective, right?
And this is something that I'm very passionate about is it's so easy for trends to appear, and then they become viral and they're on fire on social media. But if you look at the studies, they're not there. So the issue with exosomes, it's a very complicated scientific process to properly harvest and then concentrate exosomes. It's not something you can do easily. And because it's become such a big topic, it turns out there's only a few very reputable brands and companies in the country that make actual effective exosomes. And there are many, many, many more companies that are making exosomes that actually, they're not really concentrated in exosomes. So you have to be careful about where you go.
And there was a study done, and that's how they came to the conclusion that there's like these 3 that actually have exosomes in the product, right?
Well, yeah, this is anecdotal. This is a colleague of mine who was looking into this, and they sampled exosomes from, I believe it was approximately 20 companies.
So this wasn't a formal study?
It's not formal. Well, it is, but it hasn't been published.
Got it.
And what they found is that...
Good enough for me.
Yeah, no, this is a very reputable guy, very reputable doctor who I trust, his research. And they found that only, I think it was 3 or 4 of the companies, they could find measurable amounts of exosomes out of 20. So,
well, that's not surprising to me, because working in manufacturing for so long, I mean, I love making skincare, and there have been quite a few times where I'm like, I don't think we can do this anymore. But I think I will always make skincare, even if it's just for me, because I've seen so many crazy things that you can say anything, that anything's in your product, and it's not really regulated.
That's right.
Or it's not regulated.
That's right.
Yet. So I'd rather just make it for myself.
Yeah.
So I know what's in there.
Yeah, and that's why we talk about this stuff, and that's why so many of our friends and patients come to us and ask us about this question, because it's confusing
and it's overwhelming. There's so many new things, and even over the last 5 years, I mean, like snail mucus, and I'm sure some of this stuff has benefits, but like, what are the things that have been studied? What are the things that really give you the results? And this stuff isn't cheap.
Well, my favorite treatment was there are some. I think it's in Korea. They have clinics where you sit there and they actually slap your face repetitively over time, and it turns out it actually works.
There was some study about that, like slapping. Yeah,
right.
I remember.
Well, because at the end of the day, anything that's going to stimulate your skin to try to repair itself will work, right? So I mean, slapping is probably not what we want to do, but this is kind of at the core of what microneedling is. Microneedling is damaging the skin at the microscopic level and forcing it to repair itself.
Yeah.
A slap is a little bit, that's a little bit rough.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like making the micro channel. Like, it's totally not the same at all. But I appreciate you trying to make that connection. Love you. Yeah. Okay, so getting back to the topic at hand. So you were saying some like volume issues
are starting to appear.
And also, so definitely keep the Botox. So you keep your good skincare regimen. Definitely add something that's going to help with the cell turnover.
Right. This is the decade to start, treatments. As you said, supporting, enhancing.
Okay.
Really helping your skin.
Supporting and enhancing what you have. Yes, supporting and enhancing what you have. So we talked about microneedling. We talked about chemical peels. So filler, Botox. Yeah. What about like clear and brilliant laser?
Absolutely fantastic. Okay. So this is also a great time to start introducing maybe some low-level laser resurfacing procedures and treatments. So clear and brilliant is a very safe laser that can be done safely for almost all skin types, and there's minimal recovery. And it, again, with anything, the more you put in, the more you get out. So it's not going to burn all your skin off and create like a whole new layer, but it's going to help turn over the cells that are there. It's going to help stimulate some skin cell growth, and it does help the skin improve. And there are ways to also use more powerful lasers like CO2 laser, which is amazing for skin. You just have to dial the energy down. You're not going to want to do those super powerful settings in someone who's in their 30s.
And there's a lot of CO2, and I'm not going to say this right, so please correct me. So the CO2 is...
Oh, carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide. Yeah. But there's a lot of lasers that are just lower level carbon dioxide, right?
Well,
so they're considered CO2 lasers, but they have different names.
Yeah, there's so many different manufacturers, and then there's like marketing terms. Yeah. But at the end of the day, the laser is being created by carbon dioxide. Okay. So that is consistent across whatever brand or marketing name there is. And like all energy, these are basically energy devices. There's going to be settings. And the key thing is, if you start doing these in your 30s, which is a great idea, especially in mid to late 30s, you just have to use the appropriate settings. And this is where you get problems, and sometimes you hear negative news about some of these treatments, and people say, oh my God, it damaged me, or it did this harm. And it's because probably the appropriate settings weren't used.
Yeah, or maybe it's somebody that didn't have great training, or it was somebody that shouldn't be doing the treatment in the first place.
That's right.
Okay, great. So are we ready to move on to the 40s?
I think so.
Okay, great. So just to recap, so 20s is really about prevention and protection. 30s is about maintaining those good habits and supporting. And then the 30s is just building on those habits and adding treatments, right? So then the 40s, now the skin is like really struggling, right? Needs a lot of help.
This is where you really start truly seeing the signs of aging. This is 40s is where you really start seeing it. So that's why if you can start taking care of your skin in the 20s and really maintaining its integrity and then supporting it through the 30s, you're going to enter the 40s so much better prepared. It's like anything else. So in the 40s, if you haven't done these things yet, it's not too late.
Yeah, it's never too late.
It's never too late.
It's never too late.
But it just means you're going to have to do a little bit more.
And it'll all help. Yeah.
So again, the basics will never go away, right? You want your retinols, your vitamin C, or your more clean natural alternatives. But now skincare and the topical things are going to be less and less effective in transforming the skin.
But just as important,
but just as important.
You can't stop using sunscreen. You can't stop
100%.
Using things that help turn over your skin cells.
Then it's going to go down even quicker.
So if anything, it's more important. It's more important to use the best skincare that you can. And don't use things that you don't need. Like, don't stress your skin out, right? Just use the things that you need.
Yeah, that's a good point, because if you stop using the skincare and your skin is aging, it's just going to age much faster. It's going to accelerate. It's going to allow your skin to accelerate its aging.
And also just keeping your skin, clear and having it exfoliated. Then your makeup goes on nicer. Then it reflects light better.
Yes.
So skin health makes your skin look healthy and beautiful.
Absolutely.
I can't tell you how many times people have come in to see me. I've had my own clients. And, they're like, oh, but I get Botox. And it's like, okay, but you don't use sunscreen. You're not using something that helps turn over your skin cells. So you have all these dark spots. And, Botox you can't put it all over your face. So you want it to look consistent.
That's right.
So I think skincare, it just gets more and more important.
Yeah. Well, in fact, it's one of the things that inspired me to want to try to do the skincare, brand and products with you, because as I think I have said before, when I was starting to do facial procedures, I was noticing that structurally we could pull things, we could tighten things, we can add volume. But if the skin surface didn't match the appearance, it still didn't look right. Yeah. So it is incredibly important to continue maintaining the health of the skin, because no matter what else you do, if the skin is not healthy, it's not going to look good.
Yeah, then it's not going to look good.
Yeah. And the skin is going to become more and more vulnerable in this decade. So in many ways, you're right. In many ways, it's more important.
And what I'm noticing, so I'm going to be 41 this summer, is really like my lower half of the face has changed. And a lot of people talk about Sculptra, and you are not a fan. And tonight I asked you, and you said because, not that you're not a fan, but that it's hard to rely on something because you don't really know how it's going to turn out, right? I kind of forget how Sculptra works, but you inject it and it has like...
So Sculptra is a class of fillers that it's a stimulant, and it stimulates your body to produce collagen in those areas. And it's my philosophy. I prefer doing treatments that are more predictable.
Yeah, me too.
More predictable for me in my hands, and also that are potentially reversible if it can be. So, once you inject something like Sculptra or Radiesse, these are Radiesse is a filler that has calcium hydroxyapatite. These things, once they're injected, it's very difficult to change. It's very difficult to reverse.
You can't reverse them, right?
Right. And so, in general, I tend to shy away from things like that, and I prefer using things that are a little bit more predictable.
And I think that's great advice. Yeah, that's great, because I hear a lot of people doing that. So my approach for my bottom half of the face is and you recommended it for me, is to use heat and to do the microneedling, because it's not like I could even put filler there anyways. It's like these like wannabe dimples.
Yeah, so what's happening in the 40s is the skin is getting looser. Gravity is now really starting to show its effects.
Yeah.
And the effects of gravity are going to be more powerful. Things descend. So that's why the neck is often one of the first areas where people show more advanced signs of aging. So what we need to try to do is tighten this area, right? And so sometimes what people will do is they'll try to use Botox to, if you use Botox in a strategic way, you can inactivate muscles that pull down and then allow the muscles that pull up to work better. So that's a way to like create the appearance that things are getting tighter. Or sometimes people use filler in these areas to try to plump the area and create kind of a lift effect. But then the other way is what you just said, where we're doing microneedling with heating, which is like what the Morpheus is, and now you're stimulating collagen contraction. So of course this is not surgery. This is not going to be dramatic. It's not going to, make an incredible, noticeable difference. But over time, if you do these things, you're going to prevent the collagen and the skin from getting weaker and looser. So it is a way to slowly improve the tightening of the skin. So it's a way to prevent those signs of aging.
Yeah, and then you were asking me, and a lot of people ask me, well, your chest and your neck, like there's no lines, like how do you do that? And something that I have been working on for a long time, and I swear it actually helps a lot, is sleeping on my back. And after I had Sienna, our second daughter, it's a lot of information, so sorry for the people if this is TMI, but when I was nursing her, I nursed her for a long time, it was too painful for me to lie on my side, and that's how I prefer to sleep. So then after lying on my back for a year, I just got used to it. But I really do think, that it's improved my chest and my neck.
Yes.
But one other thing is I remember asking Gina Marie when I was in my 20s. Gina Marie is a celebrity esthetician. Like what do you think is like the biggest, like what should we be doing? And it was me and another girl, we were in our 20s, and she thought about it and she said, I think the most important thing is sunscreen, but don't forget about your neck and chest. You have to do whatever treatment you're doing in your face, you have to do it on your neck, because believe me, when you're in your 40s, everyone's going to start being really, really concerned about their neck. So I like to put sunscreen there, whatever I'm putting on my face. Retinol, you have to be careful. You can't really put on your neck and your chest because you will get a big rash because your skin is different on your neck and your chest. But the sunscreen and lying on your back, and definitely wearing a hat. Yeah. But I think those have helped, and I'm investing in a really good schedule. I love Clear and Brilliant lasers, but for this bottom part, I mean, I show people and they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about, but it bothers me because it's like these lines, and a lot of people say that bothers me too. And so when you and I talked about it, you said it's like you have to induce the collagen. Yes. So maybe getting a low level CO2 once a year, and then being very consistent with the microneedling, and maybe going back and forth. Like I don't have to do microneedling with radio frequency every time. Right. I can, do PRP or salmon sperm with just the regular microneedling. Yeah, that's a great idea. Alternating treatments. It's going to be synergistic. But I think you bring up a great point, which is don't neglect these areas that are also aging. Yeah. And you're 100% right. I can't tell you how many times I'll operate on someone, they've come to me because they want to do something to the jawline or the lower face, and as I'm examining them, I see tremendous sun damage on the upper chest and the décolletage. And it's a big discrepancy. Yeah. And so what you want to do is try to age gracefully, but age consistently throughout all the different areas. Yeah, and I mean, I have actually terrible sun damage just on the right side of my neck and part of my chest, but I think it was from the tanning beds. But something that I like to do, because I know I get a lot of sun in LA while I drive, is wear a light scarf to cover my chest and my neck. So I have that added layer. You even wear the gloves. I do. I wear the driving gloves because your hands. And I always try to learn. As a little girl, I remember one time my aunt was like, "Oh my gosh, Ursula's hands," and she kept petting my hand and why don't my hands look like this? And she was probably late 40s. Maybe early 50s. And my dad's looking at her like she's crazy. And he's like, she's 15. Of course her hands look like that. So, she told me this really bothers me. And there's things you can do, right? There's filler, there's lasers. Yeah. So she really inspired me to protect my hands. So I would do the sunscreen, and then the driving gloves are just easy for me. But I was always really curious, what would you have done differently? Yes. You look great. What did you do? So I just loved learning about skincare and treatments. But not to get too far off topic. So one thing though, and we all have our things, right? Maybe my neck isn't aging as fast as someone else, but I have other other problem areas that maybe a friend of mine doesn't have. So I feel like a lot of my girlfriends that are in their 40s, they're like, I want a neck lift, I want liposuction, or what do I do to make my job better? So what non-surgical and what surgical procedures do you like for the neck and jaw area?
Yeah, so this is a great age to start introducing some more non-invasive type of treatments. And what it's going to do is it's going to then prevent you from having to do the bigger surgeries. You'll postpone that and have to do it much later.
Well, that's good to know because I didn't know that.
Yeah. So for the neck, there's a lot of, there's been so many developments. Something I'm very excited about is this Elevate procedure that I've been performing a ton of. And basically it's a way to tighten the neck without making any incisions. And it involves a device that was actually invented by a colleague of mine.
Oh, wow.
And it allows us to pass suture under the skin using light guidance, so you know exactly which layer it is in. And then when you tighten it, you're elevating the muscle, which is what we would do in a regular open neck lift, which is a traditional way to do a neck lift, where you're making incisions and then directly, observing the muscle and tightening it with sutures. So this all does it with light guidance and a device that does not make incisions. So it's a great way for someone to improve, rejuvenate the neck without actually undergoing surgery. And
does it still give you like good results, or is it more like subtle results?
Especially at this age.
Okay.
Yeah, because again, I think the whole philosophy is trying to target these issues before they become too far of a problem or too big of a problem. So the 40s, when you're starting to show bands in the neck, or you're starting to show some laxity of the skin, looseness, this is the time to do something to improve it, because if you don't, it's going to get worse. And then when you do go to address it, you're going to require a much bigger operation to handle it. Yeah.
Awesome. So that sounds like a really great option.
Yeah.
So no scars, surgical results.
Yeah.
And you can, so what is that helps with like tighten, and it also helps,
it elevates the muscle.
So does that mean like if you have like saggy skin, that helps that? Or if you have like, a double chin?
Right, because you can combine it with liposuction to get rid of fat. So if you have fat, you combine it with liposuction, you get rid of the fat. If you have some loose skin, it will help the skin tighten as well, and then helps tighten the muscle. And again, in your 40s, mid to late 40s, it's okay. The advanced signs of aging of the neck haven't really quite settled in yet. So you have time to do these more minor procedures.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, another big thing is the eyes, right?
Yes.
Below the eyes, above the eyes. So, filler is really, really popular for below the eyes, but not everyone's a good candidate for that.
Yeah, you have to be extremely careful with filler below the eyes. So once you start getting that groove, it's really tricky. Now, I think very good plastic surgeons have good techniques on how to do it.
Yeah.
But you have to go to someone who's very experienced and very skilled in this, because you can have filler put in there and they can come out very, very wrong and very bad.
We've seen that. We have a friend and she's still dealing with it. It's been like 10 years.
Yeah, so you have to be very careful about filler in that area. But Botox around the eyes is incredible to reduce the lines that are formed around let's say the crow's feet area.
So that's the lines. But if you have like a groove, like you said, like a depression.
Yeah.
So filler, let's say they're not a good candidate for filler. Would you recommend like an eye surgery in the 40s?
It depends what's
it depends
what is forming the groove. In many, many cases, especially in the 40s, the groove is being formed by looseness of the fat tissues that are below the eye, and they're starting to bulge forward, and then also losing volume in the cheek. That's why I always tell you have such a great eyelid cheek.
Oh my gosh, that is like the most doctor plastic surgeon compliment ever.
Yeah, I'm like, honey, you're so beautiful. Your eyelid cheek junction is great. This is how I compliment Ursula sometimes. But it's because ideally the contour from the lower eyelid to the cheek should be moving forward and in a very nice convex contour. So in this form. What happens though, if the fat starts bulging forward and the cheek has lost volume, it starts forming a groove.
And then part of this is just your genetic makeup, right?
Some of it is genetic.
Like it's the anatomy of your face. I remember a good dermatologist friend of ours who I love, she gave me a similar compliment about the eyelid cheek junction. Yeah. She was like, but I mean, you have such a beautiful exotic eye shape. You're definitely going to need an upper bluff. And I was like, which is fine, but it's just kind of the anatomy, right?
Yeah.
And so normally, like if somebody would you need both? Or like over time, would you need both? Or some people are just...
By the time, in the vast majority of people, by the time you're showing signs of aging in the lower eyelid, you're also showing signs of aging in the upper eyelid. So you almost always have to do both. And it makes sense because if you operate on one, let's say the lower eyelid, you don't want to start aging differently on the upper eyelid.
That's true.
Then you're then 5 years later.
But I mean, if you don't need it,
if you
let's
don't
say.
need it, right? Of course.
And then I've heard you say like 40s is kind of that decade where like the eye changes.
So many of the eye surgeries I do now, these are patients in their 40s, and then also the neck procedures are.
Yes.
These are like the two areas where people really start showing their.
And those are the areas that people are like, what do I do? Like
Yeah.
this is really bothering me, and I've noticed it's my friends in their 40s.
Yeah.
Well, that's great because there's so many options for that. So
Absolutely.
obviously the topical things, the non-surgical things, the lasers. And then surgery is great. So we're kind of starting the surgeries to kind of, I guess, not enhance.
Yeah.
But also kind of restore, right? Like restoring the things to maybe the way they looked like in your 20s.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the principle that guides really good surgeons is when we're in training, we're really taught, like when we're learning procedures, the ideal is like what's natural, right? Mm-hmm. So we're always looking at like what's a beautiful upper eyelid or lower eyelid, what's a beautiful face, what's a beautiful cheek, and it's looking at beautiful youthful faces that are natural. That's the ideal. So really good surgeons, that's what guides us, is like how do we make something look like it hasn't been operated on?
Yes, let's hope that's the goal for everybody. And also that like fits your face, like what did you look like at 20 versus like what's the popular, I don't know, eye look. I don't know if people do that anymore, but yeah. So another thing people are talking a lot about, and I know we're not trying to really get into surgery, so you can direct me to the next decade, but there's been so many people and they're just so interested about this ponytail facelift. And some people have said like the 40s is when people are doing it. And so, celebrities like Lindsay Lohan, she looks gorgeous. Anne Hathaway, I mean, I don't know if these people have done anything. I think some of them have. But they're in their 40s.
Yes.
So is this the decade where you would do this kind of, I forget what it is, where you're not really doing a lot of incisions.
Yeah.
What is it called?
So the endoscopic.
Endoscopic.
Right.
So is that like the decade that you should get an endoscopic facelift? You said I don't need one, but you also said I don't need a lot of things. So who knows?
Well, it's funny you bring this up because it's a big topic of conversation right now. So there was even an article, I think it was in the New York Times or Wall Street Journal, where they said it seems like women are getting these surgical procedures younger, facelifts specifically, which 20 years ago was unheard of.
Yeah.
So to your point, what it is I think patients now have been taking really good care of themselves. They've been applying all these things that we've been talking about, skincare in their 20s, more skin powerful treatments in their 30s. Now they're getting to the 40s and they've aged so well, but they're starting to see things that you can't overcome with those other treatments. And now we're really looking at something structural. Now we're really looking at reshaping. And that's where a facelift comes in. So the reason this ponytail facelift...
Because that sounds insane. Like 40, even 50. Well, maybe not 50, but 40? Or 38 or however old your face is?
Yeah. And so, but some of this is, like you said, genetically, some people, their face shape just is more predisposed to showing signs of aging. And so those are the patients that seem to do the best with these types of endoscopic facelift procedures. And by endoscopic, what that means is endo means inside or under, and then scopic is a scope or a camera. So these are procedures that are done by making small incisions in the scalp and then passing a camera underneath the layers and then tightening everything from inside using a camera.
I mean, that's amazing.
It's
so
amazing.
Can you not do that in your 70s or 60s?
No, because by the time you're in that, once you're in the 60s and beyond, these kinds of minimally invasive types of procedures are just not going to be strong enough.
Got it.
Yeah.
And one more thing, because before we leave the 40s, so you could potentially do a ponytail facelift if you need one.
Right.
Or if you're a celebrity who people constantly scrutinize.
Yeah.
But also, like I have lines that it's more like crepiness, so it's not something I could use Botox for. Could I do like a light CO2 just for my eyes?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So CO2 lasers are like the workhorse of skin, and they can be used in so many different ways and applications and areas, but it all comes down to the settings. And I love doing CO2 lasers for the eyes. even as early as like mid to late 30s, you can start resurfacing the skin.
So why didn't you do it on me then?
Because I just told you, look at your eyes.
You're so annoying. You're blinded with your rose-colored glasses. Okay, anyways. So, but why would we just do my eyes? Why wouldn't you just do my whole face? And then couldn't you use that on the neck?
Yeah, of course. We could go everywhere. We could do everything.
Oh my God. I want to do it.
Now she's going to ask me, hey, you got to do that laser you've been talking about on me.
No, I want to do all the things. Just we have 2 kids. It's like so hard to find the time.
Yeah.
And then, our oldest daughter, she gets upset if I come home with like a red face or scabbing. She gets so sad. I'm like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
And I mean, she doesn't get it yet because she has perfect skin.
Yeah.
But it's really a time thing for me. And then summer's coming up. So you wouldn't want to do these things. You have to stay out of the sun.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're doing any kind of resurfacing.
Yeah. The sun and sun damage is probably one of the major perpetrators of skin damage, and so
it's the biggest one, right?
It's the biggest one. So you have to always maintain that part of your skincare routine, no matter what decade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like sunscreen is not enough. Like you have to wear a hat. And you have to, wear, in my case, the gloves. Maybe long sleeves. Maybe get that scarf out.
Yeah. The full body, like covering the beach.
Like the beekeeper look. Right. I love that. Okay, so we've covered 20s, 30s, 40s. Okay, so now we're in our 50s. And we've got our great skincare routine.
Yes.
We have been doing Botox, maybe some filler, heat, resurfacing, collagen induction with our microneedling and our microneedling with radio frequency.
Yeah.
Maybe we've gotten a bluff at this point.
Right. Maybe a neck procedure.
Maybe my Elevate neck procedure, getting that tight jawline. Yeah. So what major concerns are you seeing in the 50s?
The 50s are where people are really starting to show a lot of this descent of the face. So that's where the face is starting.
It sounds so sad. The descent of the face.
Descent and loss of volume in the face.
Okay.
But here's what's amazing. So I just saw a patient today who is 50, and she's someone who is like you, taking good care of herself, and has done all these treatments since the 20s. And I got to tell you, people nowadays, 50 is the new 40 or 50 is the new 30. It's incredible.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm so tired. Like it's late.
Yeah. So 50 is the new 40.
Yeah.
And people who are in their 50s.
Well, look at J-Lo and like Sofia Vergara. And granted, these people have like everything at their disposal, but they look great.
Right. So this person came to me with concerns about aging and wanted to know what to do. Yeah. And it's the simplest consultation ever, because I'm like, there's really not much you need to do, and there's all these little simple things we do. So I bring that up because one of the objections I get sometimes when I do consultations in patients who are, let's say, are a little bit younger, is they're like, I really don't want to do anything now. I just, I really want to try to just avoid all of these things, and I'd rather just not do any treatments or whatever. And I always say, that's great. Like, everyone should only do what they're comfortable doing. But you cannot deny that if you implement these strategies we've been talking about today, there's absolutely no question that you're going to slow the progression of aging tremendously.
There's so many great treatments, and you don't have to get filler, and you don't have to get Botox, because there's resurfacing treatments, there's chemical peels, there's microneedling, there's radio frequency.
Right.
There's
but when
so
you
many
do them
lasers.
all together, it is very synergistic. So I have patients, come to me, unlike this one today, who's been doing all these treatments all these decades, who looks amazing. She looks like she's 40 and she's 50, 51. But I also have patients who come in, they're 51, they haven't done anything. This is the first time that they're going to try to rejuvenate their appearance, and they'll tell me, it wasn't a priority for me. I didn't really want to do these treatments yet. I wasn't ready, whatever the reason is, which is valid. Everyone has to do things when they feel comfortable doing, but there's no question that person, when I see that patient, they look significantly older than the patients who have been doing these treatments. So it's just important to keep that in mind, that these treatments, when they're done appropriately at the decades in this strategic way, it's going to slow down aging tremendously.
Well, that's great news. So 50s is laxity and volume?
Yeah, so that's the last thing I was going to say is, so now what's really interesting about this question is that probably 20 years ago, I think any plastic surgeon could have given you a very straightforward answer about 50s. 100% you need blah, blah, blah. But nowadays, it's like, we're dealing with two different patient populations. It's like, well, what kind of 50-year-old are you asking about? Are you asking about
an LA 50-year-old?
Oh, LA 50-year-old. Okay, now that's a different story. But seriously, that's how different the results are.
Have you seen, and these ladies all happen to be Latina, so I'm sure there's a genetic component, but like, have you seen Eva Mendes and Eva Longoria?
Yeah.
I mean, they're in their 50s. I mean, have you seen them lately? Because they look better than they've ever looked. Like, they look so young. I mean, I saw Eva Mendes recently. I mean, not in person. I have seen her in person. She's gorgeous. But I mean, she looks 35 and she's like 50 something. It's crazy.
Yeah, these are people that have access to all of these services we've been talking about, and have the luxury of time, and have the luxury of being access to the best providers
and good genetics.
And absolutely, you know, I mean, that's how they probably ended up being in front of the screen. They were born with the good facial structure. So yeah, so I mean, that's what's exciting about this stuff. If you apply these things and you apply them, you know, in a smart way, and you do them responsibly and you do them naturally, you can, and they look natural, right?
They look amazing. But wait, what if you're not an LA 50-year-old? I don't want to put down anybody's wherever you're from.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
But like Midwest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love people from the Midwest. I love the Midwest. But maybe there's not as much access, right?
Right, correct. There's not as much access.
And it's kind of a different aesthetic.
Yeah, also culturally, society-wise, they're not as open to these procedures. And that's fine. That's why sometimes I have those patients come in who have come in, they're in their 50s and they haven't done anything yet, and they're like, you know, it's really bothering me. The person that I look in, the person that I see in the mirror is not the person I remember. That's not me. And the other thing that's interesting is a lot of them will say stuff like, now I see my mother. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see my mother.
Oh, wow.
And they're reflecting on the fact that their mother obviously is older, and they're seeing that, wow, I'm literally mirroring the changes that my mother's had.
Well, that's kind of fascinating, though, to see like how you are aging. Yeah. And if you're aging the same way as a parent.
Yeah. So I have so many patients say that to me. And so that's why I say it really depends on which group. So if you're talking about someone who hasn't done these things yet.
Yeah, that group.
And even the patients who have taken really good care of their skin, they're better along, because now at least the surface is good, right? But the biggest issue is the loss of volume, the descent of tissues, and then now we're going to have to do something surgical.
Okay, so surgical really kind of starts in the 50s.
And you know, you can probably get by and buy some time with some fillers and things like that. So you can minimize some of the signs with fillers, because if you've lost volume and what you need is to have it lifted and elevated surgically, but you're not ready for that, we can use, you know, thicker fillers like Voluma, for example, and use a sufficient amount that can create a slight lifting effect. It's never going to be surgery, but for some people, you know, it buys them time. They'll say to me, you know, I'm just not ready to do a big procedure now. What can I do?
And I mean, it's so scary. Like,
yeah, it
what
is.
If you don't want to? And it's a big investment.
Yeah.
So another question. There's been some things that have come out about filler, and like how it stays longer than we thought it did. And, you know, maybe it's not that great. And, you know, there's various schools of thought about it. It has been studied. It is very safe. But yes, maybe sometimes it stays behind a little longer than you wanted to. Or you don't want filler. So what would be another way to increase volume without filler?
Well, funny you should ask. There's something very exciting that's been introduced to the market recently, and it has to do with fat, because normally my answer to you would have been your own fat. Okay. So fat grafting. Fat grafting has been around in plastic surgery for decades, and in the last 20 or 30 years, it's really become an incredible tool that we use to rejuvenate the face. So we take fat from some part of the body. It could be the abdomen, the waist, the thigh. The thighs. We process it, we purify, and then we add it to the face in a very careful, precise way, and it can add the volume where you lost it. But now there are two companies that have come out with products that are off-the-shelf fat. So literally, you open a package and it's fat. Now the fat's been taken from cadavers, and it's been processed in a way to
And I don't know what's worse, like getting it taken out of your body, because that scares me, and that sounds super scary and invasive and like painful. Or like getting it from a cadaver. That is just weird.
I know, it is. And so when I do use these products, I do have to have a conversation with the patient, and I reassure them that this is something that we've been doing in medicine and surgery for a long time.
I mean, it just sounds weird, but I guess it's not that weird, but it's different.
So these things are they're derived from fat, and the fat cells themselves are no longer alive, so the fat cells aren't there. But and
they've been purified and washed.
They've been purified, washed. Anything that can be immune reactive has been removed. So what remains is just the structure on the fat cells, and then the growth factors that go with them. And so what they have found is if you inject it, it actually stimulates your body to produce and support by making more fat in that area that you inject. So I've been using this now for a while, and it works great.
And do you use it in the face, or are you using it on the body?
You can use it in the face, but you have to be, obviously very, very careful about anything that you do on the face. In the body, it can be a little bit more forgiving because you have a much larger area to work with. But yes, people are using it in the face. People are using it for the body to do buttock augmentation, to enhance breast augmentation. So it's a very exciting way now that we can add filler without using the traditional like hyaluronic acid based fillers.
So then would that be permanent, or does it also kind of dissolve?
What you inject itself may dissolve, but it's replaced with your own fat.
And that is permanent. So I remember you telling me if you inject fat in the face, let's say you're doing a mommy makeover and the person needs volume in their face. How cool is that? That it's like it makes the skin have like a nice glow or something. Right. Does that injectable somebody else's fat? Does that do the same thing or no?
I don't know if they have.
And it's not really somebody else's fat, as we just learned. It's the structure.
Right. It's the structure of it's not the actual fat cells anymore. But I'm not sure if the studies have shown the same benefits because live autologous fat cells, which is from your own body, that has the potential to be stem cells. And then stem cells are cells that can become anything and produce a wide variety of growth factors. And that has been shown to really help the skin. So that's why your own fat is probably much more powerful doing that than probably anything else.
So if somebody wanted facial rejuvenation at 50, is that something that they could do? Like they just want to rejuvenate their face with their own fat? Or is that something that's it's a big procedure, you have to do it as part of something else?
No, you can do fat grafting by itself. It's just that
to the face.
Yeah, to the face.
Because that's not really a big part of the body, right?
Right. But the issue is it's more about like the aesthetics of it. So in other words, by the time you're in your 50s, if you haven't done a lot, for example, what type of 50-year-old? Yeah. If it's the 50-year-old I saw today, a little tiny bit of fat in her face is perfect. That's all she needs.
Got it.
But if it's another 50-year-old who hasn't been doing these treatments for a while and now is showing loose skin, loose muscle, loss of volume, fat alone, we can do it.
But it's not going to give you the best result.
They're going to be underwhelmed. So as a surgeon, it's very disappointing to do a treatment on someone and have the person be like, oh, I don't really see a difference. You want to recommend things that people are going to look at themselves and say, wow, I look great. And if you just did fat grafting by itself in someone like that, they're going to look at themselves and be like, I don't see much of a difference.
But for somebody who just needs a little bit of volume, who doesn't want to do filler,
be amazing.
They could do that. It's not like, oh no, you can't, that's too small of a procedure.
Right.
Okay. And then you can also put that in your hands, right?
Yeah. So
and then is it true that people put it in their feet?
I have not heard that yet, but
and their elbows and the knees.
Oh, right. Wherever skin has become crepey and you can kind of see the underlying bones. Yeah. Think of fat grafting as like, you're kind of you're like smoothing over, you're padding, you're smoothing over. So the hands, when your tendons start showing in the veins.
What's sad is that I've always had the tendons in the veins. Like, so that's just my anatomy. I mean, crazy veins, and I'm just used to them, so I don't care. But I think they scare.
I like your hands.
I think they scare some people because like in photos. And okay, anyways, enough about me. Okay, so we've covered 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s.
Yes.
So 60s and beyond.
Yes.
It sounds like if you probably are going to need some kind of surgery for the facial descent in the 50s.
Right.
Is everything descending now, 60s and beyond? It's kind of the whole...
Yeah, so what I said in the 50s still applies. It depends what kind of 60-year-old, because even 60-year-olds now are aging so much better. But yes, at this decade and anything beyond, you're really looking at surgery to try to improve the appearance of the face. It's going to be hard to do that with anything less. And it's going to be usually combination procedures. So, improving the eyes, improving the face, the neck, all working together.
And then the whole body.
And
right?
then sometimes, yeah.
And then these things aren't just for women. They're for men and
absolutely.
women. And men should be doing them too.
I'm seeing way more men than ever.
Good.
absolutely, because men are caring more about their appearance. They want to age. They're seeing their partners, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I got to keep up with you. I'm gonna have to try to do some of these treatments.
I mean, society is so much more forgiving for men, and like things kind of maybe look a little better on men than they do on women. But anyways,
no, but it's true. So
it's just as men should be doing. These things.
Absolutely. So I have men. I have patients come in. They get their procedures, and then they bring their man. They bring their partner, and they're like, he's got to look good too.
That's good.
Yeah.
And men maybe are probably a little bit more scared, right?
Yes, for sure.
Of these procedures.
Yeah, because us men in general, we're not so used to doing little procedures and things to take care of ourselves like women are. Women growing up, taking care of your hair and your nails, and you're used to doing treatments for yourselves, whereas most men are not. So it's a little bit more foreign to us.
So PSA, if you have a boyfriend or a husband, bring them to the med spa at your local plastic surgeon.
That's right.
But you're going to come with me. I want to do microneedling together.
Okay. Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
The couple that microneedles together?
Stays together.
All right.
And then microneedling your scalp, right?
Yeah.
So for hair loss and then hair rejuvenation for men and women.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, isn't this incredible how many things we covered? It's
so fun because, like, things like facial descent make me sad. But then hearing about all of these things that help, and it's never too late. Like, if, what a weirdo that, like, I was so obsessed with sunscreen at such a young age.
No, but that was very smart.
But it was just because I didn't like being sunburned, and I just didn't like the feeling of my skin being hot. So I'm very much a spray tan person. But I did the tanning beds because I liked being tan. But anyways, it's never too late. It's never too late to use the sunscreen. It's never too late to do any of these treatments. And it's fun. And it should be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we covered a ton today.
Yeah.
This was great.
Should we try to go back over it? Let's see if I can do it. Okay. So teens and 20s is really about prevention and protection. So you make sure that you're using gentle things, definitely that sunscreen. And then, at late 20s and 30s, it's about kind of supporting those really good habits, maybe adding a retinol and some Botox, right? And then 30 is kind of like supporting and enhancing, adding heat, adding collagen injection, still staying really on top of that skincare. And then 40s is like all of those things supporting and now maybe enhancing, rejuvenating. And then 50s, enhancing, rejuvenating, supporting, and
then maybe now creating some structural changes through minor surgical procedures.
Perfect. And then 60s and beyond is...
Now we need to do some surgery.
Okay, great. Well, that was awesome.
Yeah, great. Well,
and for both men and women.
Yeah. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed that and learned some. I know this was great. I think I learned a few things myself.
Yeah, me too, definitely.
And we look forward to speaking to you guys soon again.
Yes.
Great.